Before we jump in, if you're serious about building a sustainable career in music, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to FiXT Academy. We bring in actual operators from within the industry to share practical insights you can apply right away.
I know we have got a couple questions in the Q&A, which we'll get to here in just a minute. And if there are more, please add them. But one more question for all three of you, and that is the mix feedback process. When, I think for Joel and Eric, you're sending the mixes, but Nico, you're getting mixes from guys like this that you have to weigh in with other stakeholders, the band, managers, whoever else might be involved in those conversations. But what makes for a good or again, we could go on like, what are the negative things to avoid or what are the positive things to focus on to make a mix feedback effective? And I can see from working with mixes to artwork and graphic design feedback that there are people that are not used to getting critical feedback or how to provide it or voice it. So I'm curious how you guys think about that in terms of mix and production feedback.
My favorite notes are the kind of notes that have an emotional component to them. Like I love notes that are like, this part's boring, this part needs more energy, a lot more than like hi-hat up 1 dB, because at the end of the day, that's less important. So I really admire an artist who gives me that kind of feedback because they're usually right. It's like, wow, that part could have more energy, and so, and also from a mixer perspective, like I always like getting notes because it kind of means you entered the next phase. It means like it's good enough to give you notes. If you don't get any notes, that's like, oh, it's not even like I must have missed the mark so much that it's not even worth, going into the details. So when I get that first round of notes, part of me goes, oh, thank God, I actually made it through. And then I mean, I'll do them all. Even to the detriment of the song sometimes, or a lot of times, but it's just how it goes. At the end of the day, it's their tune, and that's how I look at it.
I've got some rules. And back in the day, I used to ghost for Joey Sturgis when he was like the #1 metal guy. And we were doing like 40 plus songs a month. And because Joey was like, yes to everything, I was just like, we had to kind of figure out how to systematize a process to be able to handle high volume, high pressure, so we're knocking out label bands like Attila and all this awesome stuff. But then we're doing like small bands that are like, some local band from like Greece that just wants to work with Joey. So, we have to like provide a certain level of quality and responsiveness, and it has to be totally transparent. Like you don't want the label band feeling like they're not getting the same, like, you're distracted or whatever and not working on their stuff. Right. So in order to do that, we kind of had to systematize. Actually, it's funny. We made a course on this called Speed Mix, which is the best thing we've ever made at URM in terms of like quantity of sales and things like that. Like a lot of producers have taken this, but in there, we teach some very important frameworks that you would create, like SOP, standard operating procedures. So first one is always one contact and notes over email with a checklist. Okay. And the reason for that is, like, for example, say James and Nico, you work together at the same label, and Eric, you're the manager, and then there's the band. So you guys don't have a consensus on what you want, but then like Eric hits me up. He sends me a text. He's like, bro, turn this and this and this up. And then Nico hears it. He's like, dude, what the hell did you do? Like, nah, bro, you got to turn this up. And then like the singer hits me up 20 minutes later, like obviously as a mixer, that you're going to ruin it right there. Like you can't take feedback. So you need the team to create a consensus, right? And then to bring it into you as a mixer and be like, here's what we're executing. Because then they've already argued about it. They've thought about it. They've gotten pissed off, and the drummer and the singer have punched each other in the face and then made up later and decided that the vocal goes up 2 dB and not the snare drum. So that stuff is important because the band needs to reach a consensus. Second, so that's the first one. Second, I think having, like I said, one primary contact and one email. Second, I want everything time stamped and concise, but as detailed as possible. What I mean is, like, do not write me a freaking essay about the intent of the part. Holy shit. I hate when I see a half a page and where it's like lead guitar up in the solo. Like, just get a little more. It's like, when I wrote this part, it's like, look, I don't care. Like I do, but I don't. I don't want to hear it. What I want to hear is like what's not jiving in the mix, not like the intent. If you need to explain the intent because I don't understand, I will ask you for clarification, because sometimes, people aren't good at communicating their notes. But the more concise it's written out on a checklist, the easier it is to do that. Next, having a checklist, providing a checklist back from the mixer's point of view is super important, just as important as getting the notes. So the mixer validates with an X that you actually listened to the note and either did it, or here's the reason why I couldn't do it because I didn't understand it and no one picked up their phone or whatever. or, hey, this part, I tried this, but this is in this and this and that problem happened. But that way, at least the artist, from the artist point of view, the mixer acknowledged your note. They're not just bullshitting you, because if they don't give you your notes back, and again, not everybody works like this. I'll give you an example. When I mix for Cell Dweller, Clayton sends me a freaking video, which is actually the most badass thing. And he's like, at this section right here, can you blah, blah, blah. So I don't send him a checklist back, because he's got like a 5-minute video where he's explaining everything in his DAW. But every other artist I work for, it's always a checklist, because then, like I said, I can check it off and say, hey, you told me to take the snare up at this, but I don't actually have that track. I think it's missing. Little asterisk. Can you guys investigate? And, oh, you're right. It didn't get sent over in the stems. Let's get it over. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is creating a process that's duplicatable, that's repeatable, that's structured and standard. And then, most importantly, communicating that to the band before you start working saves so much bullshit and so much stress on everybody's hat. And it's just being organized. It's respecting their time. It's them respecting your time. And if you don't systematize it, it can just, I've seen every situation you can imagine. It's fucking chaos. It's much better to have a very, very systematized approach to it. And again, sometimes you need to pick up the phone and break the rules, but more importantly, just having a pipeline of communication that everybody understands, so no one breaks protocol, because the singer will call you because they're in a dispute with the guitar player and be like, bro, I need my version of this mix, blah, blah. And you're like, no, like, you can't just have your own version of it. Like, this is dangerous. Like, we don't want to piss off the A&R guy. Like, can we just agree on what we're going to do, please? So anyways, communication is very, very, very important.
Yep. And always include a rough mix.
Yes, always. That is insanely good advice. Even if your rough mix sucks ass, what's important is like your balances, right? Because I'll give you an example. I got fired once from a local band in Chicago, like 15 years ago. The dude sends me an all caps email. He's like, I can't believe you didn't turn up the guitar solo here. Like, what mixer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, it was labeled background guitar. There's a lead vocal there and there was no rough mix. And all he had to do was tell me to turn the damn thing up. But he was so pissed about it. I'll never forget the email he sent me. And I'm just like, dude, it's not even a guitar solo. It's literally behind a vocal, but it was supposed to be a guitar solo. And the vocal was supposed to be, how the fuck am I supposed to know that? Like, I can't read your mind. I'm not your mom. I'm not going to come change your diaper for you. Like, you got to tell me, like, and the rough mix tells me that, like, okay, I hear this loud ass synth here. Okay, that synth is supposed to be really loud. This is a moment. How do I make this sound better now as a mixer? But you're giving them, they know what they're going to expect. Or here's another one. I'm going to get myself in trouble, but I was doing a test mix for Scott Stapp. And Scott, one of the greatest, most iconic rock singers. And oh man, I Thrasher was producing. Eric, Kevin really well. And a good friend of mine. And like, man, I did my first mix and I sent it to Kevin. He's like, dude, this is so sick. We sent it to Scott and he's just like, dude, mix is awesome. Can you make it sound just like the demo? And I called Kevin. I'm like, dude, what the fuck just happened? Like, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to fall out here for Scott. So what had happened is Scott was listening to like the Kevin's like at the end of the tracking session printout mix of however he had it balanced for 6 months in his car every day. And then he heard it different. He wasn't used to hearing it. So I kind of had to figure out how to reconcile what he wanted. And again, having that rough mix saved my ass, because now that I knew what he was listening to, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to reamp the guitars. I'm going to go back to this type of chain that Kevin used. And I'm not going to try to tweak this too much. And I'm going to, keep it more in that vision. And then the next mix I sent him, he was like, nailed it. And I was like, thank God. So you know what I mean? That's why you have a rough mix. It's so important.
And from an A&R perspective, how does this play out on your end, Nico?
Vocals up. That's it.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
He just sends that as an auto reply.
Yeah, just vocals up. No, but I mean, I do think that's important, but it's always case by case thing. My job, honestly, is just streamlining communication, because when we're going into the mix note process, sometimes I've seen it being bust out in the second version. Sometimes it takes 7 or 8 versions, which seems like a lot to me, but sometimes that's what it takes to get a song there. But when we're going through that process, my biggest thing is time is valuable, and I don't want to waste anybody's time who's working on this project. I want to pay efficiently. I want to get songs done efficiently, and I just want to make sure we're not missing any deadlines for releases and stuff like that. So I've had situations where I'm the one that gets the notes from the band and I send it off to the mixing engineer, and vice versa. They come back to me and I send it to the band. Sometimes it goes through the manager. Sometimes there's artists that I have a level of trust with who maybe have some knowledge with production and have mixed some other bands and stuff before, that can communicate right with the mixing engineers and the producers and whatnot. But yeah, it's all a case by case thing. I've even had certain situations where like I don't know, people have almost pulled out before because the wrong terminology was being used. Like, I think, Eric, you mentioned that when you first started talking about this. Like, I'm curious, so I can maybe learn something here too. Are there even like keywords that you, Joel and Eric, look for in mixing stuff, like is saturation or brightness and darkness, like words that you guys like to hear?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I say there's definitely commonalities. So go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, part of the job is being a translator and learning what people mean and not actually what they're saying, which is part of the producer gig too. I've gotten feedback before. I mean, like I mentioned, I like when they appreciate that the emotional part of the song is the most important. Not to say I don't like the occasional technical note, but I've gone the other direction where I've gotten a note that says like the mix sounds too red, needs to be more blue. And it's like, you have to learn like, oh, they kind of mean like maybe they want a little more compressed. So you get an element of that. And I don't blame people because it's not their job to know compression, saturation, fast attack, so that's kind of okay with me. I think one thing, kind of touching on the other point, is like what bands can do and stuff. The most valuable thing to me is having a strong point of view and being able to delineate your thoughts. The worst thing in the world is when an artist or a band goes, I don't know. Like, I hate those people. I want someone who goes, I want to do this. This is how I want it to sound. I want the drums this way. Those are the best notes, and you're all working towards the same goal. I get so frustrated. Joel probably gets this too. You get the notes, they go, can you turn this up? I just want to try. We all just want to try it. We all just want to try what it's like if you cut the bridge in half. And I'm like, I'm mixing your song. We're not trying. So like, what do you want? What was the goal of the part? So the best artists that I've worked with have a very strong, unwavering point of view. And they go, this is how it's supposed to be.
How often do you guys you're in the mix process and somebody doesn't understand this is the mix process, but wants to take it all the way back to rearranging, rewriting,
Constantly.
Are you trying to trigger us or?
I've seen it.
It happens all the time. Again, I think everything is upfront communication. So sometimes just calling the band. Again, this is the kind of thing I would usually talk to, but explaining to an artist what mixing is and what it isn't. So for example, sometimes I get these quote requests that come in the email and somebody will be like, yeah, so how much for you to mix, master, edit, comp vocals? I'm like, all right, let's break this down. So first off, I'm a mixer. I could edit for you, but it's going to cost a lot of freaking money. So much money. I think you're going to shed a tear of blood when you look at it. So I have an editor who's amazing. I've got like 3 of them, and they work with all these great producers, and they're like $85 a song, and they'll have it done by the time we get off this email thread, so it's like, hire that person. Don't ask me to edit. I'm not an editor. Next, I'm not the producer on the track. You're not paying me 3 points and half your publishing because I didn't write half the song. So I kind of like, I'm happy to, throw some stuff on it, but don't be like, hey, can you write a bunch of post-production for this? Well, I can, but it's going to cost a little bit more than my mixing quote. Next. So you know what I mean? Like, you just got to explain these rules to people. Like mixing and mastering, I know some people like to do it, but really, like Eric was said, the greatest records of all time, most of them are made as teams. And I'm a huge fan of collaboration. I understand like when a lot of people start out, younger producers, they kind of get in this, I have to do everything or else it's money out of my pocket. And then they get a little smarter and they realize it is short-term, but long-term you win. Because when you start sending work around to people, they start sending work around to you and you get cool opportunities you would have never had a chance to get. So I'm a huge fan of collaboration. I would rather, and this also goes to AI. It's like we have a music industry as long as we collaborate together. It doesn't matter what robot, what it does, it literally doesn't. Matters is if you want to work with people and you work with people, we all continue to do this when we make music and the industry thrives. So I like to collaborate with people because it's like if a producer sends me bands, I'm going to send them bands back. If a label or a manager, like I do everything I can to send people work and they send me work back and it's great. Like a collaborative approach is very, very, very important.
If you found this conversation to be valuable, please take a moment to like the video and make sure you're subscribed. It helps more independent artists discover these conversations. FiXT Academy is also supported by our Patreon members. If you want deeper conversations, extended sessions, and direct access to what we're building here, you can join us there. The link is in the description.